Professor. I'm so humbled by your presentation. Would you please talk about the institutions in Africa, because we are cultivating strong leaders than the strong institutions. So according to me, I would like to hear your opinion concerning the institutions. How should we cultivate strong institutions than strong men who may sometimes cultivate their personal growth more than what institutions are supposed to do? So, would you talk about African institutions and how we are going to improve it? Then, number two, and the last one, would you kindly talk about, would you give a comment or one of the inspiration that motivates you to mobilize people and inspire people about African stories for the last 50 years? One thing that inspires you most. Thank you.
My name is Jekai Musa. I'm a member of Bunga ya Mwananchi and also a follower of William Samba, one of the African religions by Richard Masinda Wanamembe, a Panafricanist. I have a question. If you cross this eye, you will find, before that, this university is one of the best universities in Africa, especially the School of Engineering. But if you cross the downside, you will find there's a tower, the first tower is being built by the Chinese. And opposite the tower, there is a department of engineering, a school of engineering. So, I always wonder, because my brother did an engineering course in this university, and he is doing what we call casual labor with the Chinese at the Jomokenyatta International Airport, JKIA. So I wonder what kind of education we have in Africa. You waste time in school learning about TV. While somebody in China, a child of 10 years, is struggling to how to make an airplane. So what can we do as Africans to move out of this level as education system that was proposed to us by the whites? Thank you so much.
Interest is actually the Ubuntu you mentioned, and then the role of Panafricanism in economic development. Because I think we Africans have a tendency to talk and glorify a lot of things, but when it comes to the ground, unfortunately, in Africa, that is where we find the worst cases of violations of human rights. So where is this Ubuntu that is not found in Africa, and yet you want to export it to you to go and civilize the European? The worst cases of violation are found on the African soil.
Thank you very much. Yes, okay, thank you so much for the presentation, Professor. I am a student at IDIS. My question is regarding the aspect of responsibility to protect and also the current conflict we are seeing in Southern Sudan. We've had an African Union Summit, and I was hoping we would have a concrete action taken against that conflict. So when we blend this with the aspect of Panafricanism, what do you think is the best action to be taken so that peace is restored in Southern Sudan? Considering there was an arms embargo which some African countries were opposing to that, it was imposed by the United Nations. So could you please give us your insight on that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Marisa,
really inspiring lecture. 3 short questions. Well, I don't know how short your answer will be. So one was African mathematics. You were going to elaborate on that, so just a reminder. Second was, what are your thoughts on how we can fight the foreign power that oppresses us in conjunction with our local leaders? And thirdly, and your thoughts on reviving the philosophy of African Ubuntu while we are currently obsessed with so-called superior white Western philosophies.
thank you very much.
Asante. Thank you so much. Let me take the last one first. On African mathematics. The origin of mathematics came from Africa. How many of you know this? Only 2 people? Mathematics started in Africa. Actually, mathematics was started by women. There's a book you need to read called Africa Counts. Read that book, and the School of Education should have that book, Africa Counts. It's only recently that they've begun to study African fractals. African fractals is a geometry of nature. It's a geometry that makes the connection between human beings, the environment, and the earth. And this book by Ron English, Modern Computing and Indigenous Design, goes back to see the foundation of African fractals. And what you learn and go on YouTube, and there's a 15-minute video on African fractals. You could not have the modern computer without African mathematics. Because African mathematics is not closed like Euclidean geometry. It is open and connected to the wide universe. And in fact, this book on African fractals is the main book I use on my course on African politics. That's the main text. Because I believe on the revolutionary possibilities of talking about interconnection between human beings. It is that interconnection that rises above the hierarchies that you asked me about. How can you rise above the hierarchies of superiority and inferiority? African fractal and fractal thinking opens the door for us. And fractals in African society unite spirit and matter. European philosophy divides and separates spirit and matter. And we have crude materialism. Your next question is about the foreign powers. The foreign powers are actually very weak. Yes, yeah. Where do they get their strength from? From the local collaborators. That's what makes them strong. People from within our midst who work with them against Africa. By themselves, foreign powers will not get anywhere in Africa. Let me give you one example. There are some people in Africa who always go to beg for aid. Why are you begging aid? This morning in the New York Times, there was an article in the New York Times about how much money is shipped out of Africa by people in countries with oil, and they mentioned people who run safari companies too. That means Kenyans. Now, I hope one thing that Fahamu could do is to create a page on Pambazuka to write down the names and accounts of those who have illicit funds in Panama, in Cayman Islands, and Virgin Islands, and expose those Africans who are taking money out of Africa. Because you cannot go and beg aid when your money is in the bank overseas. So the foreign powers benefit from the extraction of resources from Africa. Ubuntu is about sharing. The first question was about African institutions. How many of you have heard of Mbongi? Nobody. NBONGI. That's an African institution that comes from the Congo. How many of you heard of the Palava? The Palava. You've heard of it. The point is, the success of the British in Kenya was to denigrate all African institutions. Last week I went to do all that competition. Where are you going to end up when you finish all that competition? Are you going to go anywhere different from that person who passed away last week? Our brother Tajuddin Abdul Rahim passed away in Nairobi on May 25th, 2009. And you could see Pan-Africanism at work because Nigeria is supposed to be one of the most bureaucratic countries in Africa. But the Pan-African movement in transporting the mortal remains of Tajuddin from Nairobi to Lagos, and then from Lagos to his town in Funtua, within 24 hours they cut through all paperwork and all bureaucracy. In other words, the Pan-African institutions exist. Now, the question that Mr. Muga is asking us, how can we build those institutions from the lived experiences? How can the African Union build on Ubuntu, build on Mbongi? I teach Mbongi. I teach Mbongi as the palavering African democracy, because Africa had democratic institutions. We do not believe in a democracy that talks about certain people being superior to other people. The democracy of Donald Trump. We don't believe in that democracy. So the institutions that we're supporting are democracy of representing everybody. No discrimination. The institutions come from people. And we strengthen the institutions from below. Now, in Africa, we have certain institutions that have become corrupted. When some young lady gets married, you give something called a bola. What do you call it in Huh? Okay. Some of those institutions have been corrupted. Because institutions that served a certain purpose in pre-colonial Africa, all the capitalism becomes corrupted. So in Africa, prior to colonialism, when somebody dies, the husband takes care of the wife of his brother. What you do in capitalism, you want to take away the property of your departed brother's wife. And we had in Kenya here. So the question is, how do we keep those institutions and bring them up to the 21st century? Responsibility to protect. We do not accept responsibility to protect from the West until they accept that they committed crimes in Africa. They must apologize for the crimes that they committed in the past. All students of international relations must read about the crimes of King Leopold, and the Belgian government must apologize for killing Patrice Lumumba. How many of you know about the United Nations investigation into the killing of Dag Hammarskjöld? Dag Hammarskjöld was the Secretary General of the United Nations. He was killed by the West because he believed in real responsibility to protect. Not responsibility to protect as a technique for Western military intervention, like what the French is doing now. The British are doing, the Americans. The Americans have created something called the United States Africa Command. And they were coming to Africa to protect Africans. Protect from who? Now, the South Sudan is a very sad situation. Very sad situation. And we have to discuss it. I'm glad you raised it. Because we have to discuss this every time. Ask the African Union to make available to you the report of the Peace and Security Committee investigating what happened in December, January 2013, 2014. It's a report, a very long one, with a minority section written by Mahmoud Mamdani. There are very clear guidelines of what is to be done. The African Union is afraid of publishing it because the AU Commission on Peace are very beholden to certain foreign powers. So the Southern Sudan, and you live in Nairobi. You live in Nairobi, Southern Sudan is in Nairobi. Yes or no? The money that is stolen from Southern Sudan is where? Nairobi. So don't ask me about Southern Sudan, let's ask about Nairobi. Let's explain where they're getting the money from that they bring to Nairobi.
Ask the president of Kenya.
Alright? There's a question of violation in Africa and violation of human rights and economic development. Nothing is going to stop African. I don't use the word development. Nothing is going to stop the transformation of Africa. In fact, everybody will tell you that Africa is growing faster than everywhere else in this financial crisis. But why is it we do not see this transformation? Why is it it's not manifest? Because we have not reached the point where we can lead our society to a point where the leaders are held accountable. And the only way the leaders are held accountable is if you do not sit down with them when they commit crimes against your people. I talk about a funeral. I went to this festival called the Samosa Festival. And they talk about Somalis in Kenya. And one of the success of the Western powers is to make people look at other people as outsiders. Now, are Somalis Africans? Are they Kenyans? Do we go to events where we have people who make money out of smuggling sugar from Somalia and they call it fighting terrorism? Or is this something I'm talking that is outside of common knowledge? Because I'm told about these syndicates in Kenya who make a business from war and terror. That is why we cannot develop. Because we know who these people are. Yesterday I was reading a report from Journalists for Responsibility. And in this report on journalists, it says quite clearly how many millions of dollars do not come to the Kenyan treasury for this illicit trade between Kenya and Somalia. So the violation of human rights is something which I will speak out against. But my human right is dependent on your human right. And I'm glad you're from the School of Education. Because 15 years ago, I suggested to the School of Education in Nairobi, said, do we have any primary school textbooks on Panafricanism? Because if we're going to teach Pan-Africanism, that's where we're going to start. We're going to start in the primary school. I don't know if I answered all the questions. Did I answer all the questions? Yes? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Time is fast spent. We'll only take 3 questions that we really need done. Finish short and the point. Okay, 3. Okay, I passed it. Just one last question.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Gashene. I'm also doing masters in social movements building. I'm a member of Bunge la Mwananchi, the University of Bunge la Mwananchi. I also lecture there, and I have invited one day Professor Horace Campbell to Jubilee Garden to launch his book, Global National Catholic Failure in Libya. So I'm a master student. My question is to Professor Campbell, and also if Maria Zomo can answer this. Mwalimu Nyerere said that nationalism outside Pan-Africanism is tribalism. What we do in Kenya is nationalism, or to organize nationality without Pan-Africanism is tribalism. In the last 50 years, this university has been producing students and professors and whatever. What has happened that even today, the people in State House, in opposition, are ethnic barons. What has happened that these values of Pan-Africanism have never been inculcated in our people, and this university has been there in the last 15 years. If you don't ask 50 years or somewhere, if you don't answer that question, then is it right time now that Bunge la Mwananchi, the university, becomes the educator or educated?
My question is it right for Kenya to build a wall between Kenya and Somalia? And if yes, what is the reason behind it? And if no, what's the reason behind it? Thank you.
I actually have to raise my hand as a trustee. What is Pan-African movement? Sorry, I am from the School of Economics. Okay. What's Pan-African movement trying to tell?
Hello. Could you say again where you're from?
Sorry?
Could you say again where you're from?
I'm from the School of Economics.
Okay.
Which action is the Pan-African movement doing against, to tame the greed of African leaders? And when we talk about an asset of diversity in culture and linguistics, what is Pan-African movement doing to enable us appreciate that culture? Because I remember growing up not so long ago, and I was being told that I shouldn't even speak my own mother tongue. Now, when we talk about the resources that Africa is reaching, now, what can we do as Pan-Africans to be able to ensure that the resources we take outside Africa are as rich as the resources? Because sometimes we take our natural resources in poor form, and then later on end up importing them expensively. So what can we do to ensure that our resources are optimum before we talk of foreign exchange?
I think we'll stop there.
Mr. Bumbe, did I answer your question the first time?
You don't know.
But it's okay.
Halfway.
This is the answer to your question. Ubuntu, justice, health, reparations, eradicating negative values, promotion of cultural values, transformation of educational system, economic reconstruction. I want to focus on this one. Economic reconstruction. What do we mean by economic reconstruction in Africa? We mean by economic reconstruction that we start the economy of Africa from providing the basic requirements for the African people: food, clothing, shelter, and a clean environment. That is the foundation of the African economy. And economic reconstruction in Africa must begin with the people and the lives of the African people. Colonialism was not interested in Kenyans or Ugandans. You planted cotton and coffee, pyrethrum, to go to the sea. Kenya planted flowers to fly to Europe instead of planting maize. Kenya is worried about it becoming a member of the signing the European EPA partnership agreement. I'm very happy that Tanzania refused to sign the economic partnership agreement. And I'm hoping that Kenyan students would read a book by Yash Condon called Trade is War. Trade is War is a book by Professor Yash Condon that talks about the role of international trade. How much trade does Kenya do with the Democratic Republic of Congo? Or is Kenya supporting the pillage of the Democratic Republic of Congo? These are questions that you must be writing theses on in your graduate school on economic reconstruction. The other question would be the use of resources in Africa. The most valuable resource Africa has, the most important resource Africa has, is its people. You can talk about gold and diamonds and oil. The people, the fresh air and water are the most valuable resources Africa has. Now, how do you ensure that those resources are used? I'm glad you raised that point. Monsieur Mugo and Ngugi have made this point. When they went to Alliance High School, they were discouraged from using African languages. We cannot develop in Africa unless we rehabilitate African languages as the language of instruction. There is an institution of the African Union called ACALAN, which is based in Mali. And the job of ACALAN is to strengthen and develop African languages. I've told you that in the United States of America, there are people called bioprospectors and bioanthropologists. They're studying the language of the Turkana, of the Sukuma, and of African peoples in this region. They tell you that those people are backward, but they're studying those peoples for understanding cognitive skills in the 21st century. So our universities must be realigned for new thinking in this century. Mbukele wananchi, Mr. Gacheke, we need Mbukele wananchi to go beyond populism. Mbukele wananchi was an important organization at the time of the Bunga Revolution. But Mbukele wananchi is not taking some stance. Last time I spoke in Nairobi, a member of Mbukele wananchi told me, you go back to America because you support the rights of gays and lesbians. I am waiting to see Bungale Wananchi take a progressive stand on the brothers and sisters who are in Black Lives Matter. So it's not enough for Bunge to say, we are at the forefront of the revolution, but on certain questions you hide from, Mr. Gachi. We want Bunge to be the real Bunge, because as Mr. C.L.R. James says, revolutions are not decided in Parliament, they are only registered there. And Bungale Wananchi must take itself very seriously. You say you're from the University of Bungale Wananchi. I came to your university space because I hope that I will be rehabilitated. I hope I would have had an apology from Bunge for that man said, go away. You come from America, you bring American nationalists here. Bungale Wananchi must stand at the forefront of defending rights based on language, religion, culture, sexual orientation. So the question of Pan-African affairs and Pan-Africanism and nationalism, I don't need to stress it. You made a good point about Nigeria. I was in Tanzania last week, and when I was in Tanzania, all of the discussions, I bought a volume of books, 9 volumes on African liberation, because Tanzania has something to be proud of. The first thing I come to Kenya, when I land, I read in the newspapers, some people talk about elections in 2022, and they talk about tribal balance. I don't know who are these tribes in Kenya. Because it seems to me that there are no more workers in Kenya. There are no more peasants in Kenya. There are no more cultural artists in Kenya. And every time you buy into this argument of tribalism in Kenya, then you're anti-Pan-African.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your insights. Now, at this juncture, we're going to invite Fahamu for just a minute or so of the event we have there, showcase 15 years of ambassadors.
At the beginning, I talked about 15 years of pharmaceutical use, one of the oldest projects of Fahamu, and Professor Campbell is one of the longest contributors. So just briefly, like 2 minutes, background of pharmaceutical use, and then we are going to organize it.
Gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Henry. I'm one of the editors of Pharmaceutical News. And after this great lecture that we've had from Professor Horace Campbell, I would like to tell you something about Pharmaceutical News, which Professor Horace Campbell is very intimately associated with, because a very regular contributor to this online weekly publication. Standing here, I'm happy to address this audience. I'm a graduate of this university. I'm still a student here at the Institute of Anthropology, Gender, and African Studies. So I feel quite at home. I speak on behalf of a small team of dedicated editors who prepare and publish Pharmaceutical News each week. We publish our own publication in English, French, and Portuguese languages. And Pharmaceutica, over the last 15 years, has existed as a platform that is motivated and works to build the oneness of the African people and to champion our total liberation from all forms of oppression. We amplify the voices of the African people in their struggles for freedom and justice, both at home and globally. We are convinced of the boundless abilities of African people to understand and to offer effective solutions to our problems and to contribute towards building a better world. Over the past 15 years, Pharmaceutical News has distinguished itself as a leading online weekly news magazine reporting and analyzing social justice issues across the Pan-African world. In this period, we published over 90,000 articles, and our website receives more than 650,000 visits a year. We are grateful to Professor Horace Campbell and others, and a whole network of writers, journalists, academics, activists, policymakers, and experts in different fields who contribute articles for publication that make Pharmaceutical News a truly unique source of information about Africa. We also rely on many volunteer copy editors and translators, and if you have a bit of time, you can get in touch with us and see how you can support this work. I would like to welcome you to subscribe to Pharmaceutical News, which is distributed free of charge. You are also welcome to send useful articles to consider for publication. We are particularly keen to see young people engage in debates about the Pan-African world by contributing articles or commenting online on the articles we publish. We live in a multimedia world, and it's our desire as Fahamu to expand beyond our online presence into Pharmaceutical radio and TV. On the 15th anniversary of Pharmaceutical News, we want to affirm our commitment to producing this important publication for the African people. We will continue to look for allies, both individual and institutional, for support. We ask you to consider making a small donation if you are able to support Pharmaceutical News so that together we can effectively play our role in the unfinished business of Africa's liberation. I thank you.
Thank you very much. So I would like now to ask Professor Campbell to come here and Professor Zemo. Three copies here of the recent book from Professor Campbell, the one we showed you, The Global Network and the Social Freedom in India. If you'd like to officially donate 3 copies, the first one is to Professor Zomo. Thank you very much for as a way of organizing and thanking the university and donating one copy to the library of the university. I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but also Professor John is also director at another institute of data institute here in Kenya. If you like, since this book talks about security in military, you should like to make one also today.
I direct your program for National Defense College and Defense Staff for Undergraduate University. Now, which one should I do? The National Defense College or the Defense Staff?
Defense.
I would say National Defense College. Because there is a master's program, which is okay with you. And then you will share the other of the university.
Thank you very much. We say that Pabasuka News is now, please stay. Pabasuka now is 15 years old, and Professor Campbell has been contributing almost every week for the last 11 years. So we like to recognize him by giving him a Suja trophy, Pabasuka News a Suja trophy. Professor Zomo to hand over.
Okay, I have a little quiz. I have a little quiz. And I'm going to give a prize to the first person who answers the question to this quiz. What is the most important book that was written by Walter Rodney? Okay? It's not fair. I will have to find one for her. This person then. Next student, who is the student who had their hand up first? What's the most famous book written by Walter Rodney? Alright. Okay, stand up. Come forward. This is a pamphlet on Walter Rodney and Panafricanism today. Okay. Who is the most famous Kenyan woman who was a Pan-Africanist? Okay. Come forward. You said the most famous woman who was a Pan-Africanist. What's her name? She got one, we'll have to give another one because some people said, Professor Mugo, come forward. Professor Michelle Mugo, Professor Wangai, they told us that we do not want to distinguish one from another. Women bring collectivism to African liberation. Thank you so much.
So those of you who didn't read the message today, don't get discouraged. I've just played my diplomatic card that very quickly, and our collaborators are willing to actually donate a few more copies for our students. So later on you can come and check it, not today, but in a little while, and I'll have a few. Actually, I think I have enough copies for those who are present and who are signed. Okay?
Thank you very much. So as we close, I would like first of all to thank all of you for coming. We could not have had this lecture if you did not come because it was a very engaged audience. The number of questions we could not get time to respond to them. So thank you very much for coming. I want also to thank the whole Institute of Diplomacy, in International Studies, starting from the Director, Professor Gogo, for having allowed us to use this venue, and all our colleagues and staff. Thank you very much for coming and supporting us. And finally, I would like to thank my colleagues. There are a number of them here. If you're from Fahamu, please stand up. If you're from Fahamu, anyone from Fahamu? Fahamu, can you stand up? And the others who have been here in the office who have to work together with the Institute to make sure that this event happens. Thank you very much again, and we'll be in touch with you in the future, in the near future, for similar events. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Kiara, give us the applause.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I will just 1 or 2 minutes, 1.5. Have we done great afternoon this week? I mean, big clap for yeah, it was very, really exciting for me. Not coming from that area, I'm an economist, but I have learned a lot today. And I feel very honored that the topic of Panafricanism is still very, very hot. And that's why Professor here is very well known internationally. Has spent a wonderful afternoon with us. So, mine is to give thanks to all the people who have made it possible. First of all is our director, Professor Maria Nsomo, and the director of Fahamu, who have just spoken to you. They are the people who are behind the success of this happening, and we want to give them great thanks. Ahead of them, obviously, is the universal administration led by the Vice Chancellor and the Principal of Economics. They made it possible by making facilities possible, by making, by allowing us to use all kinds of facilities, and personally, for the Vice Chancellor being here to one of the senior officers, Professor Emerson Jero, who is the Principal of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. So let's give them a clap. And Professor, our main guests, I'm believing them for many years when I was a student and for the long time I've been teaching here. I've not met him in person, and it was very, very exciting to hear your delivery of this lecture, Challenges of Panafricanism, and you have looked at very, very, very dimensions. I am sure that all of us are not teachers today. And we are doing. Those of us who lecture and those who are students here. It's been a truly stimulating lecture in many, many ways, looking at a wide range of areas that Pan-Africanism is very important. Sometimes I think some people seem to think that Pan-African became a bit lukewarm in the 80s, 90s, and all that. But it's very clear. Some of the flag bearers of that concept have been very active, they have been working very hard, they have come with new things and titles, and especially Professor Campbell here has been able to look at very, very recent issues like the old religion, which was destroyed through nature intervention, and it has created one of the biggest catastrophes happening in North Africa, leading to many people dying in the sea, and the whole crisis in that region grew and caused particularities. And I'm happy that he has been able to put his pen and paper on that subject. And we'll be very happy to know how we can access his books so that where this picture is headed, so that I think many people would like to hear your ideas about it. As an economist, I learned a lot about the links between Pan-Africanism and economic development. I wish we had more time this kind of topic. There are some improvements that I possibly we could give Africa as an economist that I would be very happy to engage in that kind of issue. I'm happy to see the reality of Africanism and the being human being, that concept. And the whole attack on our tribalism and ethnicity and all that things are like Africa and that the greater Pan-African movement, including the Region 6. I would have liked to hear anyone possibly tell us about Obama, whether he runs as a Pan-Africanist or what role you think he has played within the whole greater issue of Pan-Africanism. But I think this possibly is another time. So mine is to tell you thank you, and I think the issue would like to invite you again when you have a chance, for a much bigger engagement with the whole student population and the professors here. And that club is telling you must come back. And as soon as possible, so that we can look at those issues. Otherwise, I think I want to thank everybody, the people who have been honest in this, and Takamba, as a key honest delegate, Dr. Rusanyona, who has been ensuring that the MC of the work is done very well, and all the participants here, students from this university, lecturers, and our visitors from Northern University. God bless you. Asante sana.